Here's my conclusion after going through countless articles and YouTube videos for the past 2 weeks about every single type of investment option available for a beginner. So, before we even think about investing, we need to solve a major problem, and that is tax drag. What I mean is, whenever we invest through a standard account, every time we collect a dividend or sell for a profit, the government takes a significant amount of cut from the profit we earned. And because we are paying tax on every single transaction, in long run what happens is we are not investing as much money as we would if we didn't had to pay the tax. Because we are not investing at our full potential, compounding is also not able to perform at its peak efficiency. To tackle this, we have two types of investment account, the pre-tax account and the post-tax account. The idea behind this account is that we don't have to pay the tax on our investment till we are investing. So the pre-tax account is also called a tax deferred account. In this account, unless and until you start withdrawing the investment, your investment won't be calculated as personal income. Basically, it means till you are investing, you won't have to pay the tax or the personal tax on your investment. It does two things. First, it reduces our tax bracket as we are not paying taxes on our investment. Plus, our investment is not counted as our personal income. Our total income tax comes under a lower level of tax bracket. So, we are overall paying lower tax as well. The second is because we will pay tax only when we start withdrawing the money, we have ample of time for the compounding to work at its full potential, which in return will give us much more return on our investment. Similarly, we have the pre-tax account. Pre-tax account is also called tax-free account. Basically, in the pre-tax account, what you do is you are paying all the tax before you even start the investment. So when you actually start your investment journey, you won't have to pay the tax, nor will you pay the tax when you withdraw your investment. Let's assume you need to make a big purchase in few months or a year and that purchase can't be delayed. In this scenario, our first priority should be the capital preservation because we are not in the position to tag the volatility of the stock market. That's why the closest thing matching our need of capital preservation is the term deposit, which is also called certificate of deposit. So in term deposit, you lock away a specific amount of money with the bank for a specific fixed period of time, ranging anywhere from 30 days to 5 years. In exchange, the bank guarantees you a fixed interest rate. Now, if you take the money out before the decided timeline, you will have to pay the penalty. Obviously, there are also some term deposit which offer no breakage penalty, but in return, they will offer a much lower return. Now, you need to keep two things in mind. First, up to $250,000 is insured by the government of your country for term deposit. So any money that is under $250,000, it won't get lost if the bank defaults or it goes under. But even a single penny above $250,000, that is not insured. So you are at a risk. For this, you can divide your money if it's a lot into multiple accounts. But then again, the thing is your term deposit is calculated in your personal income. So you will need to pay the tax. And the next thing is term deposit don't give you enough return on your investment to beat the inflation. Oftentimes, it either just balances out the inflation or sometimes it's a bit lower than the actual inflation. So as for investment perspective, it's not a good thing, but as for the emergency cash reserve or a short-term money purchasing power perspective, it's a good thing. So first we are talking about investment where we don't want to take much of a risk. And the best thing for that is our bond. Basically, bonds means that we are lending our money to the government or a corporation. In return, they will give us a coupon, which is our return on investment and our actual investment at the time of maturity, which is also decided when you actually buy the bonds. But the thing is, bonds also come with two types of risk, the interest rate risk and the credit risk. First of all, you are lending your money to government and a corporation, right? Now, the thing is the prices of bonds moves in the opposite direction of the interest rate offered by the bank. So if the interest rate across the economy rises, the newly issued bond, means the bond that was issued after the one you bought, will have comparatively higher returns, right? Now, your bonds have lower return, the new bond have higher return. When you will go to sell your older bond, its resale value will drop because obviously if you sell for $100 and the newer bonds is selling for $100, people will buy the newer bonds because they are giving higher interest rate. Now let's actually talk about the investment part. And the next thing is your credit risk. Basically, as we are lending our money to government or corporate, in general they are safe, but there is still a risk that something can happen and either the company can go under or the government can default. In both of the scenario, you will be royally screwed because we are not even getting the higher interest rate. Also, we are taking the risk. Then why not take a risk in something that will at least give us a higher interest rate? Okay, to get this higher interest rate, we need to own productive assets. For example, stocks. So in stocks, we are not the lender, rather we are owning a fractional part of the company we are buying the stock for, and that company is a publicly traded company. We get a return in two forms: capital appreciation and the dividend. Capital appreciation means as the company grows, the value of the company will grow. If the value of company grows, the value of its stock will grow. If the value of a stock grows, then the stock you hold will also grow in price. And when you sell that stock, you will get the higher price. Obviously, reverse can also happen. If the company goes down, well, you also know what will happen. The prices of a stock will also go down and you will get less money. The second is dividend. So, as the company grows, as the company makes extra profit, sometimes they offer you an extra payment. That payment is what we call dividend. But anyway, I still don't recommend going for individual stocks because, as I said, if the company goes under, then again you are just as screwed as you would have been if the company goes under in bonds. Plus, we have a safer option. The safer option is the bundle approach. Instead of buying a stock for a single company, we will buy stocks for multiple large companies. Like if we have $1,000, instead of spending that $1,000 on a one company, we are going to divide this $1,000 into 50 other companies. What this will do is even if one company go under, we still have a lot of companies that will save our money. And obviously a newer company will replace that company. You get the idea, right? In this scenario, it's very almost impossible for all the money to vanish. Now, to do this, we have generally two or three types. First, we have active mutual funds. Second, we have passive index fund or exchange traded fund. Let's talk about active mutual fund. So, what happens is in active mutual funds, you are paying a professional analyst to analyze and pick a stock in which you are going to invest. For this, you will pay them roughly 1 to 2% of your entire portfolio value. The thing is, in long run, we are talking 20 decades, history has proven that active mutual funds are not able to beat even a basic index fund, which we are going to talk about in just a bit. So it's just not recommended to go in active mutual funds because you are paying the extra brokerage amount, and second, anyway they are not able to beat the actual passive index fund. Now, what is passive index fund? It's just what I said. Basically, computer algorithm automatically tracks all the larger company in a specific index and creates a portfolio for you where you can invest the money and it will get divided because it is done by computer algorithm. Obviously, there is human to just check that nothing sort of a glitch is happening. You are not paying for any brokerage amount, and because we are talking about top 500 or top 50 companies, when a company goes under, another company takes its place, your money will always get divided in the top companies, and it's highly unlikely for all of the top companies to vanish in a single day at a single time. Now, the difference between passive index fund and the exchange traded fund is just one thing. Almost everything is same. It's just that exchange traded fund is priced throughout the day when the market is open, whereas in index fund the price is set when the market closes at the end of the day. So you can continuously trade on the exchange traded fund but not on the passive index fund. But none of them is a deal breaker for us because we are eliminating the company risk. We are getting better returns with the added benefit of constantly beating active mutual funds by roughly 90% of the time in the period of 10 to 20 years. Now that we have talked about our passive index fund, the next thing I found is that most of the wealthy people talk about diversifying their portfolio, and to diversify their portfolio they generally recommend tangible asset. But tangible assets are like your real estate, but they are not recommending the actual real estate. Like they are not recommending you to buy the physical apartment, the luxury one, not the luxury we call, the actual luxurious one, because they only give enough return to actually be worth the investment. The normal apartments, they are just not worth it. They barely give roughly 2 to 3% of yield. Just skip them unless and until you can actually afford a luxurious person. Now, what I was saying is that So when we buy a real estate, first of all, it is highly illiquid. We are geographically locked, means we cannot move it, and it is very capital intensive. So to fix that and to get the actual benefit of real estate, we have a trust. It is called Real Estate Investment Trust. We are going to call it REIT. Okay, just for a short term, Real Estate Investment Trust. We are going to call it REIT. Now, what is REIT? These are the publicly traded corporations that own and manage income gathering commercial properties like your apartment, data centers, medical office, logistic warehouse, etc. etc. You get the gist of it. Now, as long as these trusts pay out their taxable income, majority of their taxable income as dividend to their shareholder, government give them tax exemption. In return, you get the benefit that a real estate generally gives you. But there is a huge but here, and that is this one is highly sensitive. Like anything can fluctuate the interest rate it gives, and I mean anything. So we can invest a bit of our money in the fund, but not a lot. If you want to invest a lot, always prefer the index fund. Next, we have our commodities like gold, silver, your copper, crude oil, and things like that. Anything that's related to raw material. We generally use them as a hedge fund. Now, to understand this, I will need to explain you 3 points, right? First, what is hedge fund? So imagine this. We are talking about gold. We generally only use gold as a hedge fund. Why? Because the oil will expire. You will need to rebuy it, renew it. So oil cannot be used. Copper, silver, they are okay, but they are not as reliable as a gold in holding their price value. Right. Now, what is hedge fund? So when I buy a $40,000 worth of gold right now, and let's say in upcoming decade, 1 decade, 10 years, something happens, some war happens, anything can happen in the world. So something happens, the inflation rises ridiculously high. Our investment are not even able to keep up with it. But in this scenario, gold will help us. Why? Because gold prices rises as the inflation rises. So if inflation rises by 7%, it's highly likely that gold will also rise close to 7%. Rarely it rises more, but close to 7%. What will happen is, if the inflation rises 50%, means gold will rise 50%. You get the gist of it. So I buy 40,000 worth of gold. 10 years later, the gold is worth exactly as the purchasing power of right now in that amount, in that time. What I mean is, $40,000. Let's say it buy you a BMW M3. In that time, $100,000 will buy you a BMW M3. When you sell that gold, you will get $100,000. See, it balances out the purchasing power. It balances out the inflation. But now, why can't we actually use the gold? For this, we need to understand productive assets and non-productive assets. So gold is a non-productive assets because you will only get the amount when you sell the gold, right? In productive assets like a stock or index funds, what happens is, or even your real estate, what happens is you are getting monthly payout, which the added benefit of getting the higher return when you actually sell the product. But still, you will get the monthly payout. In gold or in any non-productive asset, you are not getting any sorts of monthly payout. So you can also keep the gold, but not in a large quantity, just enough to survive a crisis. And don't overcomplicate this. Keep roughly 10 to 20% of your portfolio in gold and nothing. Okay. Now we are at our cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is what can I say? It gives you a ridiculously high amount of return, but it is highly volatile. Sometimes they can get low as 50% in just a day. Means their price decreases by 50% in a day, and they are so volatile that we don't know. In a second, our money will either go up or it might go in negative. Anything can happen. Plus, I personally, even after doing all this research, I'm not able to understand how cryptocurrency is even functioning. So I'm not going to deep dive into this. We have few more things. We have our options and derivatives. We also have our private equities and venture capital. Now, I'm not going to go into the explanation of option derivatives, private equities, and venture capital. Why? Let me just explain. Like option and derivatives are more like of a gamble or a lottery system than that of an investment, and we don't want to gamble. That is why I'm also not talking about trading. That is also for me, it's kind of a gamble. As for the private equities and venture capital, they are not gamble, but to actually go into them, you will need to have a portfolio of $1 million and the income of roughly $200,000. Realistically and factually, if we talk, if you have that much money and you are earning that much, this video is not at all for you, because most likely you already know all of this and even more than what I talked about. I barely even scratched the surface of the things I learned, but still, we'll talk more about our investment journey as a beginner in the next video. Till then, bye bye, and let's meet again.